I didn't expect to sweat this much inside an air-conditioned grocery store. But there I was, standing in the middle of a supermarket in Manila, holding a basket that weighed more than my emotional baggage, wondering if the line at the cashier had somehow turned into a community meeting. Back home in the US, grocery shopping was a silent, efficient ritual. You grab your cart, scan your items, pay, and leave. Maybe nod at a stranger if you lock eyes, but definitely don't make small talk. People might think you're trying to sell something. Here in Manila, grocery shopping felt like a social event. It started the moment I entered the store. The guard smiled, bowed slightly, and checked my bag with a wooden stick. I smiled back awkwardly because, in America, the only person who checks your bag at the door is your mom. Then I stepped inside, and immediately, chaos. Beautiful, organized chaos. There were aisles filled with snacks I couldn't pronounce, kids chasing each other with carts, titas in floral shirts discussing discounts like Wall Street brokers, and an entire section dedicated to canned sardines. I didn't even know sardines came in that many flavors. And then came the music, loud, cheerful 80s OPM playing over the speakers. Back home, our supermarkets play soft, boring jazz to make you spend more. Here, it felt like a disco. A grandma next to me was literally dancing while picking rice. My first goal was to find milk. Sounds simple, right? Wrong. I walked down the dairy aisle and stopped, confused. Instead of the big refrigerated gallon jugs I was used to, there were dozens of small boxes stacked neatly on a shelf. No fridge, no cold air, just boxed milk, sitting proudly like it had survived the apocalypse. I picked one up, turned it around, and whispered, "Why aren't you cold?" A friendly employee stocking yogurt noticed my confusion and smiled. "Ma'am, that's milk. It's okay. Doesn't need to be in the refrigerator." My American brain short-circuited. "You mean shelf milk?" He laughed. "Yes, ma'am. Long life milk." I wasn't as sure if that meant the milk would live longer or I would if I drank it, but I bought one anyway. Next mission, cheese. I was expecting my usual cheddar block or mozzarella sticks. Instead, I found cheese powder, cheese spread, cheese ice cream, cheese everything, except the kind I needed. There was even a bright orange block labeled Quick Melt. The name sounded suspiciously like something that might explode if I put it in the microwave. As I stood there debating whether Eden cheese was a brand or a biblical experience, an elderly lady beside me smiled kindly. "Ma'am, that one. Very good for spaghetti," she said, pointing to the orange block. Spaghetti? With cheese that melts quickly? I was intrigued. That's when I remembered, Filipino spaghetti isn't like American spaghetti. It's sweet, with hot dogs. The first time I tried it, I thought I was eating dessert. Now, weirdly enough, I kind of loved it. So I threw the cheese in my basket. When in Manila, I whispered to myself, channeling my inner explorer. At the meat section, I froze. Literally, because it was so cold, but also because the butcher area was open and people were pointing directly at cuts of meat like they were ordering at a fast food counter. 2 kilos of liempo po, shouted one man. Half kilo lang ate, another woman called out. No plastic-wrapped perfection here. Everything was fresh, real, and slightly intimidating. I wanted to blend in, so I pointed at something that looked familiar. 1 kilo of that, please. The butcher smiled politely. Ma'am, that's chicken liver. I smiled back, pretending I totally meant to do that. Perfect. Love that. For dinner. Halfway through, I realized there was something magical about this chaos. Everyone seemed connected. Strangers helped each other find items. A mom held my basket while I tried to reach soy sauce on the top shelf. A grandpa struck up a conversation about why prices were going up. Even the cashier complimented my Tagalog attempt with, "Wow, ma'am, galing," even though I had only said, "Salamat po," and smiled like a lost tourist. Back home, grocery shopping felt like a chore. Here, it felt like a slice of life, a community. And then came the checkout line. If you think waiting in line at an American Walmart is long, you've never stood behind a Tita with 20 coupons, a loyalty card, and a philosophical debate with the cashier about why the discount didn't apply to corned beef. But no one complained. People just laughed, chatted, and scrolled on their phones. The cashier smiled the whole time, like she was being paid in joy. When it was my turn, she looked at my items and said softly, "You like Filipino food, ma'am?" "I'm learning," I replied with a grin, slowly and sometimes accidentally. She laughed and carefully packed my items, one by one, into tiny plastic bags. I ended up leaving with about 20. Americans use one bag for everything. Filipinos use one bag per item, like each tomato deserves its own hotel room. When I stepped outside, the humidity hit me like a warm blanket. The parking lot was full of tricycles, jeepneys, and vendors selling fish balls and turon. I watched people laugh, haggle, and eat under the sun, completely unfazed by the heat. I stood there with my mountain of grocery bags, smiling to myself. Grocery shopping in the Philippines wasn't efficient, but it was alive. It had warmth, humor, humanity. Back in the US, everything was about convenience. Self-checkouts, express lanes, and silent shoppers avoiding eye contact. Here, everything was slower, messier, but filled with heart. And that's the thing about the Philippines. You come for the beaches, but you stay for the people. Even in the most ordinary moments, like buying milk or waiting in line, there's a sense of connection you can't find anywhere else. That night, I decided to try cooking with my new groceries. I made spaghetti using the quick melt cheese, sweet-style sauce, and hot dogs, just like the tita in the grocery store suggested. It looked wrong. It smelled different. But the moment I tasted it, I understood. It wasn't about perfection. It was about comfort, about sharing food that made people happy. As I ate, I thought about how, in America, I used to rush through everything, always efficient, always alone. But here, I'd learned to slow down, to laugh at small mistakes, and to see beauty in the everyday things, like long lines, melted cheese, and warm smiles. The next day, I went back to the grocery store. This time, I didn't rush. I greeted the guard, chatted with the staff, and even helped Alola carry her bags. I danced a little to the music while choosing rice. I realized grocery shopping in the Philippines wasn't just about buying food. It was about feeling human again. And as I walked out with another 20 plastic bags, the cashier waved and said, "See you next week, ma'am." I smiled. You will. Because in Manila, even a grocery run can feel like home.